two. Hey everyone, welcome to Fuck I Don't Know, our weekly chat about things that we don't know, yet we still talk about them. Kind of weird. I'm Sim.
And I'm Kevin.
Yeah, as if you forgot, if you watched any of the other ones. If you haven't, Sim and Kevin. Today we're really going to be talking about the inner child. I feel like that's a topic that has helped me a lot, and there's a lot of people that have heard about gaining a lot of value from it. But what is an inner child?
There's two ways of looking at it. The inner child is that part of us that gives us that sense of creativity and joy and playfulness. But oftentimes when we refer to the inner child in this context, it more lends itself to some sense of dysfunction, something that's happened and has really carried over in our lifetime. So two aspects.
Okay, is one of them sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. The inner child is a beautiful thing. If we didn't have the inner child, that playful, creative part of us, we'd be pretty boring.
Yeah, like what's the point of life? Because being a child, it's that like sense of wonder, sense of creativity and discovery and all this stuff. And like, I don't want to turn old. So what's the problem? Like, why does the inner child why is it made to sound like it's a big old problem?
Well, I think it came into play back about 20-something years ago. When I first touched into the inner child work was through the work of John Bradshaw out of Texas. And he really identified areas that, psychology has known about this for a while. There's usually a period of time in each of our lives that there are certain traumas, there are things that develop us in terms of the way we see the world and perception. And it's usually between 6 and 10, 7, 11, somewhere in that area is usually where these so-called traumas or experiences happen that really kind of influence us. So it really started back then is when I had my first experience with it. And so ask me again.
Yeah, like what's the bad part about it?
The bad part about it is oftentimes what we're doing is we mimic a lot of the patterns of behaviors that those people who were important to us, mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, other people that were authority figures that we, in essence, thought was God.
Yeah, we kind of look up to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And what happens is, what we do is we take on a lot of their patterns of behavior.
Yeah.
What did we see?
Yeah.
We mirror what we love.
Yep.
So that's kind of where they came from. And, it comes a point in time that for a lot of people, there comes a time that those patterns somehow start showing up in a destructive way, usually as we get older. And that's usually when people want to start taking a look at it, is when you get older.
Yeah, so are you saying like our decisions as an adult are being guided by the traumas or experiences or whatever you want to call them that we had as a child?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've worked with a number of teachers and educators and so forth, and one of the things I was told by one of them really stuck with me. And he said something to the effect that most adults function emotionally at the age of about a 12-year-old if you're lucky.
Me, I know that.
12.
I feel like I function like a 12-year-old all the time, and I love it.
Doesn't mean we don't function in the world. Doesn't mean we don't have personas. We do what we need to do, and we can function.
Yeah.
But usually when it comes to confrontation, when it comes to emotional work or something that sort of triggers our emotions, a lot of us don't have a clue. We get caught up in it. We get frightened. We react, withdraw. Many, many things can happen.
Yeah, and a lot of times those emotions either are used against you by people who don't know how to manipulate emotions, or they are kind of driving your life in a way that, because a lot of times as an adult, I found for a long time that I would want to do things in one way, yet I would keep doing them in a way that I knew was kind of self-destructive. And then I was just like, why? Yeah. Why do I keep doing this? And I was like, I did the whole round of, being in drugs and just chasing all of these kind of highs in life, and no matter how much I tried to stop, it always kind of crept back in. And it wasn't until I started to understand that, hey, this isn't coming from my kind of my analytical brain as an adult. It's coming from something deeper.
Sure.
And when I kind of started to look inwards and discovered that, and this happened to me a year ago, Up until a year ago, I was actually holding on to that child part. Like I used to say this. I was like, it's my superpower. It's my superpower. My superpower
is in some ways.
It is. It's nice, really nice. It's like all these people are walking around kind of cognitively not enlivened anymore. They don't have curiosity. I have that stuff, so it's my superpower. But I'd never met that child. Yeah. So what's something like, obviously we're talking about all this stuff. If you're like, what do you mean? Like, what inner child? Where do I go looking for this inner child? What are some things that people can do that can, at least just some thought exercises that people could do to try to look into how their behaviors are tied to their inner child?
Sure. A couple of things you can do is, one of the key things is bringing it into awareness.
Okay.
Bringing into your awareness that something's not going the way I thought it should be, or it's not as functional as it should be.
Yeah.
Give you a perfect example. There's a lot of times we know people in our lives, and it could be even us, or it could be you, that we keep entering into a relationship, and it keeps going bad. And it seems like it's the same thing over and over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, man, how do what's going on here? I can't figure this out. Obviously, you wouldn't be repeating this if you knew a way out.
Yeah. You're like dying to find a way out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And first is awareness, knowing that something is not functioning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's really key. After you're aware of it, you want to find someone usually, because when we're trying to work on ourselves psychologically, a lot of this stuff, not a lot of it, it's subconscious.
Yeah.
It's playing out underneath.
Yep.
Okay? It's not even conscious. You're not aware of it.
Yep.
Okay? And if it's not conscious, I love people to always tell me, you can always make a decision. You always have all. It's like, what? Wait a minute. How can I make a decision? Later in my life, I found out that a lot of that stuff was unconscious.
Yeah, it's like if it was up to me, I would make the decisions that make me have good relationships.
Absolutely.
And I'm doing my best, but it still doesn't work. I keep fucking it up every time.
Yeah. It's a lesson, but
sorry. What do you mean by like find someone? You mean like a partner, a healer?
It could, generally.
Or we don't like the word healer, like a person who can help you through it. Most often you want to find an objective party. You don't want to work with, say, a spouse or someone unless they've had that experience and they know how to do it. Yep.
Doesn't mean you can't talk to them and kind of bounce things off of them, but generally you want to find someone, whether it be a therapist, a counselor, someone that has had experience with it, has an understanding of what it means, because it's really key is two things. One is for that person to have some sense of objectivity. Okay. I can see what's going on for you with a different set of eyes.
Yep.
And the other thing is to be able to hold a space with you, where you feel safe, which is really, really key and important. Because one of the things that John Bradshaw and many other psychologists, psychotherapists have mentioned that about 40% of the people who begin this kind of work don't do it. It's terrifying. It's frightening.
They just never finish it.
They can't do it. It's too much.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So
I'm surprised even 60% make it, because it is.
Yeah.
I mean, to tell you as an adult, like you're a fully grown adult, and somebody goes, "Oh, you know that thing that happened at 6?" And you're like, "No way, no way. How can stuff that happened at 6 affect me today?" But it's also like, your physical growth was determined by that time. Your mental growth was determined by that time. Your environment was determined by that time. But even more than that, your lens of how you see the universe was determined from those times.
Sure.
And then once that gets set in, and especially once you get past your 30s, it's so difficult to look at it as like, oh, now everything that I knew is not that way, and I have to shift it.
Yeah, it's a matter of shifting perspective, and that's the thing about it. There are a couple of things, too, when you start doing this inner child work, is the only way to get to the other side, I have found there's only two things. One is back through it with the help of someone that can help you through that, to see it, like you said, to reframe it, to see it with a different set of eyes.
Yep.
Because ultimately, when we come to that place of understanding, it happened for a reason.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And when we begin to understand it happened for a reason, we can see it in a different perspective, or from a different perspective. And we also shift that lens of seeing the person that taught us that. it also shifts.
Makes sense.
When you move through it, it moves to a sense of compassion for them, sense of understanding, but that takes a little bit. You have to go through. And the other way, mentioned one is back through it, you have to feel the emotions. And a lot of people today, it's a tough one. And the other one that I know of is through what I call divine intervention.
Okay.
It's removed. That's not the norm.
That's you're lucky if that one happens.
It's happened to me, so that's the reason why I share it.
Oh, okay. So what happened with you? Like what?
Oh, there have been times in my life that I've gone through this deep inner child work and a lot of other experiences that I've had. That I just prepared the ground. I did the work that I needed to do, and then all of a sudden, it was done.
It was just gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
So when did you discover it? When did you kind of get the, like, was it through the work of John that you mentioned?
Oh yeah. That was one of the ones.
How did you get put onto it?
How did I get put onto it?
Yeah, like when were you like, oh wow, this is a thing, and like I should be looking inward myself?
Oh God, that started for me. When was that?
Was that after like Plato's time or something, or like?
No, it was really after the corporate world. After I sort of crashed and burned, and really had that sense of trauma, and it's like, how do I function and live in the world? Everything I knew and understood in the corporate world, the way I functioned, no longer functioned.
Okay.
And I was sort of in this abyss, in this place of confusion. And that's what really started to direct me. Now, actually, let me slow down a minute. There was a specific event. It was in 1996. I was in the corporate world managing $1 billion worth of corporate clients. And I remember lying on my living room floor sobbing like a child. I was doing yoga, meditation, and acupuncture. And my acupuncturist said, you're going to start feeling things. It's like, what are you talking about? I manage $1 billion worth of clients. I travel the country, the world. I got the world. No problem, no worries. 2 weeks later, I'm on my living room floor in a fetal position, sobbing like a child. I had no idea what was happening.
Okay.
But I remembered what she said. She said, just to let it happen. Allow it.
Okay.
Don't fight it.
Yeah.
Just let it happen. And that was really the catalyst that took me from the corporate world and really started this journey for me.
So, acupuncture did it?
Oh, acupuncture, meditation, and yoga. Those three things. Like I said, I was in the corporate world. I wasn't happy. I had all the toys, all the cars. I was in Chicago, living the high life. But I wasn't happy. And there was that part of me inside that was just yearning. It knew this isn't. You've done this. Okay, what's next? Kind of a thing. So it just happened, and I knew about yoga. I knew about meditation. I knew about acupuncture. So I said, why not? We talk about the three-legged stool in finance and all this kind of stuff. So for me, it was kind of like the three-legged stool. Something you sit on, one leg's missing. But so what I did was I started with meditation. Meditation began to give me a sense of peace that I had never known. I just felt this deep peace. And I said, man, I want more of this. The yoga, also moving the body, moving the energy, really was helpful. And then the acupuncture, like I said, a friend of mine was the acupuncturist, and she said, just let whatever happens going to happen. And I said, what do you mean? I don't get it.
You're just poking me with needles. This should be nothing.
But it was interesting because even the first time she poked me with the needles, I could literally feel this energy moving through my body. And it was like, okay. So this is what really opened me to all of this. And then when that happened, like I said, I was on the floor sobbing like a child. I had no idea what was happening. But I said, okay, I'm here. I'm open. I'm yours. Whatever it is that I'm just to see and hear, let it come.
So you surrendered to it, basically.
Absolutely, had to.
And so what was your journey like from there? Like, what did you do?
From there?
You just laid on the floor and sobbed more like a child?
Well, no, it was about 45 minutes, because one of the things I've learned over the 20, 30 years that I've been doing this, when we cathart, we can only cathart for so long.
Yeah, exactly.
Body poops out. And then we come into this state of quiet, this place that usually when the message comes. But what happened to me? So, okay, the next day I woke up, I'm in bed, couldn't get up. Physically could not stand up for 7 days. Had no fever, wasn't sick, I wasn't anything. I felt perfectly fine. But what I did was I had to lie in bed. I was reading Merton, Moore, Huxley, and a lot of mystics. And what I did for 7 days, didn't eat. I just had water. Every time I had to get out of bed, I just fell to the floor, drugged myself to the bathroom, crawled back to bed, and I just said, okay, something's happening.
Wow.
It was the very first time. that I felt prana, that life force energy that was feeding me almost every cell in my body. And to me, this was all, I mean, I read about this stuff, but this was the first time I really felt it experientially.
And you weren't like, at that point, you weren't believing in all this stuff. You kind of read about it?
I read about it. I was open to it.
Yeah.
You know, I knew, you know, there were aliens, all kinds of stuff that can it exist? Why not?
Sure. I don't know.
So, and what I did, as I said, I started reading a lot of mystics, and something started to happen. You know, I was functioning quite well in the corporate world, had all the toys, all the fun things, but that part of me, that animating part, which we've talked about before, the soul, that animating aspect of us, something was not at peace. It was yearning for something more.
So do you feel like that yearning part is also the inner child, where it's kind of screaming out for help?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no question. It's part of the inner child. It's part of the creativity, as we've talked about, the joy and all of that. Absolutely.
And like, so it's almost like the world that we were taught to succeed in, per se, is built to kind of suppress that child. And suppress almost the good parts, and focus on these materialistic kind of measures of success, and actually not deal with the negative parts of that child, because you know, we're men and we're adults, and those parts don't even exist. You know, so like, what's I've heard about. Okay, wait. So now you're in bed. Can't move. You got to finish the story.
Oh, it's a long story, but
okay. But how did you?
So
did you find help?
Long story short, I did. I was doing those three things: yoga, acupuncture, and meditation.
But you didn't find anybody to support you through the journey.
What happened was, when I was spending those 7 days in bed, I talked to several friends of mine, a very close friend of mine. I called her and said what had happened, and the key thing was, and this is how it all started to the inner child. When I stopped catharting, I went into this state of silence. And I know now that when we cathart, there's always a moment of silence. If we listen, we get a message that really kind of guides us. And it was the first thing that happened to me. And I entered that silence after this catharsis. I'm curled up in a fetal position in my living room. And this message came through as loud and clear as I'm talking to you. I want my mommy. And I'm like, what the hell? What does that mean? And I called my very good friend, Naomi, and I said, you know, this is what happened to me. She says, beautiful. It's your inner child. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, what?
So that's what really kind of sent me on that trajectory. And what happened from that point was another friend of mine said, get out of Chicago. I was in Illinois, Chicago, the corporate world, and I was there. It was freezing cold. Said, go to Arizona. Cool.
Yeah.
So I did. I called up my boss, said, you know, I'm leaving. I'm going to Arizona for a couple of weeks. And they said, okay. And long story short, I get to Arizona, and I'm in Phoenix. I was actually going to Tucson to stay at a bed and breakfast with a friend of mine's mother. And when the plane was landing in Phoenix, the stop before Tucson, I heard this message, get off the airplane now. I'm like, what? So after I just had this experience, I'm going to start listening to this inner voice.
Yeah.
So I did. I got off the airplane. I go down. I said, okay, I don't have my luggage. Nothing's here. Okay, great. Cool. Yeah. So I'm just kind of bewildered, and I'm downstairs in the baggage claim area. And it's like, what am I going to do? Where am I going?
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I went to a car rental company because I figured, well, maybe I'm going to drive. Maybe the plane was going to crash. Something was going to go wrong with it.
Right.
Nothing happened. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
So I went to the counter for the car rental. The moment I touched the car rental counter, I felt like I was going to vomit all over the counter. And this is what I finally realized, that in the beginning I used to get this stuff very viscerally.
Okay.
So that happened. So I took a step back from the car. I said, no, I'm not renting a car. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And then I saw that there was a van service. I figured, well, maybe I'm not supposed to drive. All this stuff going on.
Yeah.
So I did. I went. Same thing happened. Went up to the counter. Thought I was going to throw up all over the counter. Said, okay, you want me here for some reason. What?
Do you want me to throw up on the counter? Maybe, I don't know. I'm confused at this point.
So I did. I stayed there.
Yeah.
And I stood in the baggage claim area and just asking God, Creator, whatever you want to call it, what am I to do?
Mm-hmm.
Please guide me.
Mm-hmm.
The moment I asked that question, there was this board with all these little thumbnails of all these hotels in Phoenix. This one just popped out like a like a beam of light. I said, okay, that's where I'm going. So I did. I picked it up, called him. It was the Ramada Inn down on Indian School. And I get there, and I'm sitting down, go across the street because I'm hungry, because when this stuff happens to me, I get hungry. That's how I ground.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I get there, and I go across the street to this little restaurant called George and the Dragon.
Okay.
This Brit comes out. He was the chef, and I was sitting there quietly, just journaling, just trying to see where I'm supposed to be, what's going on. And he sits down and he says, I know where you're going. What do you mean you know where I'm going? He said, there's this magical, beautiful place. My girlfriend and I were there. I asked her to marry me, you know, and he says, I'm a Brit. I don't get emotional. He said, the whole weekend I'm in tears. He said, this place is really powerful. I said, yeah, okay, whatever. Another fish and chip and beer.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, exactly.
And he says, you're going to Sedona.
Yeah.
I said, Sedona? What the hell is Sedona?
Yeah. You never heard of Sedona?
Never heard of it.
Wow.
So the next thing that happens, he leaves, goes back into the kitchen because it's getting busy. And these two young ladies come up, ask me the same question. What are you doing? I said, I don't know. I'm seeing where God wants me. Not even before I finished that statement, there was a woman, a young lady on each side of me, and both of them screamed, you're going to Sedona! So I got it 3. And I go, okay, I'm going to Sedona. So I did.
Apparently.
So yeah, so I went to Sedona. But yeah, it goes on from there. But what I learned from that was when you start the process, you'll be met.
So it's almost like you had to go to the catharsis, and then during that peace period, you actually tuned into what it is that's supposed to happen to you, what you're supposed to get to. Like, for me, it was kind of like, I remember being a child, and I remember I was like 5, I think, and I would hear things. You know, I was always having conversations with myself. Everybody does, but then there would be this other thing. And like, I would often ask it questions. I would say like, should I steal this candy? And me would be like, yeah, let's steal that candy because we want candy. But the thing would go, no, that's wrong. And I'd be like, who is this? Why does it always stop me? Why does it let me do things that I want? And I was like, oh, everybody must have this. Because this is how my universe works. Logically, everybody must have this. So throughout my life, even, you know, up until about 15 or 16, I was asking people like, do you hear that thing that like kind of says
your conscience?
Yeah, your conscience, sure. But like it was almost like there was something else that was kind of. It would even say things like, you know, I wouldn't know what to do, and it would say like, go right. I'd be like, why? And then I would go do that thing, and then it would end up being kind of some I don't know, divine guidance or whatever.
Sure.
Then I tuned out of it completely. And I started going towards what I was told was success and all this stuff.
Sure.
And the harder I would push, and even once I would get to the point which I'd always been trying, it just wouldn't feel good. And once I kind of pushed away from that corporate world and all that, then I tuned back into that thing. And that inner voice was always saying, it told me, it said, you know, leave Calgary. And I was like, I'm just about to get the job that I've been working towards, and there's all these things that I want to succeed, and they're like, no, leave. And I was like, okay, where should I go? And I had no idea. And then Bali, same thing. Bali popped up and was like, go to Bali. I moved to Bali, and then here I really tuned into it, and I've really started to like listen to. I call it intuition. Yeah. It is the thing that actually guided me to the point where I started to look at the inner child and do the inner child work. But now, if we're saying, you know, the inner child is one of the reasons why this happens, is there, like, I know there's, you know, inner child regression therapy, stuff like that, hypnosis and things like that. Are those things something that people should look into, even if they haven't discovered the child yet?
You can, and generally people seek out professional help or someone in a counselor type position when something's uncomfortable, something's not functioning. So
like something's wrong.
Absolutely. I don't want to say necessarily wrong, but something that there's a sense of discomfort. Could be wrong, but find someone.
Are you saying discomfort can be right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, oftentimes we will not change unless we feel discomfort. Okay? Yeah. It's that sort of that sense that if everything's always going great, status quo, you know, what's the point in changing?
Yeah.
It's usually when we hit that bump in the road, something that causes us a sense of discomfort, a sense of confusion, that we need some kind of clarity, is usually when this comes up.
Have you ever met somebody who didn't have to do inner child work?
Well, it's funny that you asked that question, because one of my teachers who has been doing this work for probably 40 years, he said, of the thousands of people I have worked with, and he said, I've worked with all people of all walks of life all over the world, some of the most professional, most powerful people in the world. And he said, do you know how many people that I worked with, particularly around inner child work, integration work? He said, do you know the number of people that didn't need any kind of work? And I said, no, how many? He put up 3 fingers out of thousands of people that he worked with.
And that's not because they'd already done the work.
No, they didn't do the work. They didn't need to do this work in this lifetime.
How?
How what?
Like, how did they get that? How did they do it? Like, they just didn't have traumas in their childhood?
You're from India, right?
Yeah.
You believe in Hinduism, right?
I mean, I believe in all religions.
To some degree, all religions.
Yeah.
There's a sense of belief that there's also reincarnation.
Right.
Okay. So let's put it this way. If you come to this duality, this dimension, many, many times, what if the last time you're here you don't need to? Or you've moved beyond that? It's like a bodhisattva.
Lucky.
Bodhisattva. Yeah. Why does a bodhisattva stay in this reality? One of 2 reasons. Yeah. One, once they reach that state of enlightenment, it's either to leave, go to some other dimension somewhere else, or to stay here and help others.
Is that what you are?
Oh, I don't know what I'm. Many things.
Kevin's a bodhisattva. He's not telling us.
I'm many things, and one of the things I know is the more I know, the less I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But yet you know enough to know that you know nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I know enough to know that if I follow my heart and my guidance system, I'll be led to where it is that I need to go.
So is there anything, at least in your experience, that you've seen that parents can do to kind of make sure their children, at least, I mean, we can't say that there's no trauma, because everybody has their own version of trauma, but something that at least to lessen the effects of the inner child, maybe introduce the child to their inner child.
Sure.
I don't know if that's possible.
When you talk about trauma, there's all different levels of trauma. There's physical abuse, sexual abuse, all sorts of kinds of dysfunctions. Yep. And then there's also this sense that we just felt abandoned. My mother and father didn't love me the way I thought they should.
Yeah.
So
it's almost like everybody has it.
Yeah, everybody's got it. Like I said, one of my teachers, thousands of people he's worked with, only 3 people they're fine. Yeah. So there's always some level of self-discovery, in each of us that will help us grow and mature. And what can parents do for their children? Sit and listen to them. More importantly, let me take a step back.
Yeah.
When you're raising your children, raise them with the perspective that they're not yours, that they are given to you as a gift.
You teach children that?
No. I want the parents to first come to that state of understanding.
Okay.
And then to really allow and nurture that child to be that child. Not to tell them, this is what I did and this is who I am and this is what you have to be. Mm-hmm. But to begin to take that sort of, I don't want to say myopic, but singularity of vision that this was good for me. And don't get me wrong, it may be good for them, okay? But for me, I would ask them to begin to see the world more panoramically. And what I mean by that is to ask them what gives them joy, support them, to nourish them, to nurture them, to find themselves, because then they don't have to do it 30 years later.
Right.
Okay? But then again, when you're talking about children, you also want to create boundaries and all those other things, which is a whole other conversation. But really, it's about nurturing them, allowing them to find and be their expression of who they are. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, if I understand correctly, it's parents tend to raise children in their own kind of own image, own lens. Like, this is what I want you to be, and a lot of parents actually live vicariously through the children's lives.
Absolutely, they do.
So let them be what they're meant to be, and support that and nurture that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
If we are really nurtured, and we're loved, and we're really shown that, feel your feelings, express what you need to express. Yes, there's certain boundaries I think is really appropriate as well, because you also see when these children don't have any kind of boundaries and they're just let to be run wild.
Yeah,
it's a menace to society and
super
to
common
themselves.
nowadays.
Yeah. But with children is to really allow them to find themselves and to nurture that part of them.
I love that piece about allow them to find themselves so they don't have to do it 30 years later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. and so in this whole picture, where does the idea of love come in? Because is it that the people who get tons of love still have the trauma, still have to deal with their stuff, or is that something that does factor into it?
Love, funny word.
Yeah, it's funny.
Everything, dysfunction, inner child work, all this stuff is all based on love. Love asks us to see it from a different perspective. So we can look at all of these things, whether we're talking about inner child work or dysfunction, that if we really look at it, and that's why we're being asked to do the work, because love, when you talk about love, it just says, see me from here. Okay, see me from here. Okay, see me from here.
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean?
Okay, What do I mean? If I have dysfunction, if there's something, if I feel this sense of abandonment, okay?
Yeah, very common.
I do this work a lot. And abandonment, self-worth are probably the two top things we deal with.
Yep.
Am I worthy? All of this stuff plays out. And let me kind of take a step back. Two things that really affect us is self-worth and abandonment. And ultimately, when we really do this work, we come to find out the only person that abandoned us was ourselves. And we had to, so that we could understand a greater depth. Okay? But this is way over to the other side.
So are you saying even that part is love?
Absolutely. Everything's love.
You have to see it as love?
Everything that created everything.
Abandonment is love?
It's part of. Why not?
How?
Let me put it to you this way.
Yeah.
Someone told me a long time ago, you won't know how good is until you know how bad is.
Right.
How high is or how low is.
Yeah, you won't know the light until the darkness.
Right. Now, when you're in the middle of trauma, when you're in the middle of doing this work, does it feel like a blessing? Absolutely not.
Yep.
Because you've drawn all this emotion and all of this fear and confusion, and we don't like that. But I promise you, if you do the work and you really allow yourself to move through these stages, okay, you will come to a point where you understand it's love. And how blessed you were to have to go through it so that you could see it in so many different perspectives. And then at that point, you really come to the understanding and the belief that this was all a gift. Everything. And I was known to be strong enough and powerful enough to navigate it and to see it. And what is the end result? Is really allowing us this deep, deep state of compassion and kindness. And that compassion then lends itself to those people who we thought harmed us. Don't get me wrong, they did. But ultimately, from creation's point of view, godliness point of view, there is no right or wrong, good or bad. Experience it. Kind of blow your mind?
I think we're going to end on that. That made a lot of sense, but at the same time, I think I'm going to think about it for the rest of my life. You probably are too. So that's our talk about inner child. If you haven't, honestly, look towards that direction. That hopefully this is giving you a decent bit of kind of impetus to do that, and it has added a lot of value to my life, and I don't. There's a lot of people who can kind of benefit from it.
Sure.
If you need help, if you don't know where to go for it, get in touch with Kevin. He's been he's been a child for a long time. He knows exactly how to do all that stuff.
Yeah, if you don't ever lose the inner child.
Yeah, keep it, right? There's good parts to it, and that child is, it's like for me as soon as I put that child on my hip, and I met him, I just fell in love with them. Love the guy.
Absolutely.
Love the guy. He's we have the best time together.
Yeah.
It's the funnest times, and one of the most fun parts of me is that.
Yeah.
Right. So we're definitely not, like, it's definitely not something to lose. But.
And I want to share something really quickly.
Yeah.
I thought it was I who was going to help the inner child.
Right.
Until he held my hand and showed me the way out.
100%.
And then we walked together.
100%.
To integrate. So I just wanted to share that. It's really important because the ego and the adult thinks that we've got this all.
So actually, it brings me to a really good question. So is that because the inner child is in the subconscious, and the subconscious is the one driving our decisions, and the adult is kind of like in the analytical conscious brain? So when you get in touch with the child, your kind of auto mode is better?
I think that's for another conversation.
Where is the child?
The inner child's within you. The same as the tyrant, same as the adolescent, same as the mature adult, same as the grandmother, grandfather, the wisdom figure. They're all within us.
Wait, I have a wisdom inside of me?
You have a wisdom figure? Yes. Absolutely.
Apparently I'm smart. But okay.
Absolutely. It's all kind of bundled into this package.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Apparently I actually have some wisdom, not just a child inside. That's perfect. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll join you guys next time talking about some amazing stuff.
Yep. Blessings. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks very much.